let's get started on video number 2, and this video will begin with actually sewing the bag. This is the Tribbiani Traveler Trio, and I'm making the size small today. I'm using wax canvas as my exterior fabric, and the pattern calls for any heavyweight fabric, so like a canvas would be perfect. But if you're using wax canvas, you cannot iron any interfacing to the back of this. So I have no interfacing on mine, which is fine because this is pretty stiff and it's meant to be a more slouchy type bag. So we're going to get started. Everything's cut out and prepped. We are going to get started with assembly with step number 1. So I need to take my 2 side connector pieces, which are 6 inches long, and I am going to fold the top under by 1 inch. So what I do to do that, I am going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure 2 inches down and make a mark. And I have the ruler a little bit more than 2 inches because I realized that the marking pencil is not going to mark exactly right at the edge of the ruler because it's thick. I couldn't find my skinnier one. So my actual line is 2 inches down. And then I'm going to get some clips. Or a pin, honestly, might be more helpful in this situation because you can, kind of sew over it. So let me grab some pins. Okay, so we are going to slide a D-ring onto the webbing and then fold the webbing under by 1 inch to meet that line that was marked on the bottom or the back. And then you just want to pin that in place. I'm going to clip it. I'll stab myself. Okay, and then we'll repeat that with the other one. And again, just clip that in place. Okay, so that was simple. Now we need to take our side panel and find the center. I do want to point out, if you look at the pattern piece, the top edge is slightly wider than the bottom edge. So you want to make sure that you don't have this upside down at this point. I'm just going to fold it in half to mark the center. Since I'm using wax canvas, it will mark it nicely. You could draw a line also at the top and bottom to mark your centers on the wrong side. When I get done with this, if I have extra lines on the bag that I don't want to see on the finished bag, I'm just going to go ahead and hit it with a blow dryer on high, and that will get rid of any marks that are extra that I don't want. So take one of your side connectors and line it up so it's centered. This webbing is all sizes of the bag call for 1 1/4 inch webbing. I purchased this webbing, or actually all of it, that I'm going to use for the bags that will be on the cover of the pattern. I purchased from So Hungry Hippie. She has a great selection of less plain webbing, and it's good priced, and it's 5-yard rolls. I might as well do both of these at once. So I went ahead and bought a variety of webbing from her. I prefer cotton webbing over nylon webbing just because it's a little bit thicker. Or maybe there's thicker nylon, but nylon seems to unravel. This is a very heavy, nice quality webbing. So those are both pinned in place. I have my sewing machine. I have my stitch set at about a 4.5, which is pretty standard, 4.5 or 5 that I'll use for top stitching. And I'm just going to start at the bottom. I always back stitch when I first start sewing, and then when I stop as well. I'm going to take my one clip off. Let me check the placement of the camera just to make sure that you guys can see everything. Oh, that's not bad. Okay. So you want to sew up as far as you can to the hardware. Get as close as you can to it. And then pivot and sew directly across. Make sure that your needle does not hit those pins. I'm going to take that top one out. Alright, and then you want to back stitch. Hopefully I don't. My sewing machine doesn't always like to back stitch across thicker areas that well. You just make sure you stay on the same line. And then also I think I'm going to put a rivet in the strap just below my stitching, just for extra security, especially since well, this is the small bag, but the other two are pretty big, so you might have a heavy amount of stuff in there. Alright, and I actually got some new snips recently. These are from Havel Sewing, and they're really nice, and they came with a lanyard and a little case that they go in, which is handy. If you could either wear it around your neck, or I have mine hanging from my sewing machine, so that way I'll always have them here and not lose them, because I am horrible about losing my snips or scissors. And they're pink, so that's nice. If you haven't sewn with waxed canvas before, it really is not, it's not difficult. Sounds like it could be tricky, but it's not. Use a regular foot. I'm using a size 18 needle, so a little bit heavier because it's thicker materials. I did wax this myself. I think in the future, just based on the amount of time I spent waxing it, if I can find decent colors already waxed, I think I'll just buy it waxed. Unless it's like a printed fabric that I really want to be waxed, then I'll wax it myself. But I think for any solid, I'd rather just buy it waxed, because I took a lot of time to wax all my fabrics for the 3 bags. I'm going to go ahead now and mark where I would like to place a rivet. If I measure, that way they'll be even on both sides. So I'm going 5 inches up from the bottom and centered. I kind of actually want it a little higher than that. So we're going to go 5 1/4 inch from the bottom and centered. And this way I'm going through the part of the webbing that's folded to the back also. All right, 5 1/4. Okay. To punch holes for rivets, I use this. It's a leather hole punch. I bought it from Tandy Leather. Oh. The only bad part is that I have to kind of crinkle up whatever I'm getting in there. Just make sure you're not punching a hole through anything else. But it really works well. And it was fairly inexpensive. I think like less than $10. Okay. Now my rivets that I use are 9mm. I have a rivet press that I purchased from Gold Star Tools. It was the cheapest one I could find. I think there's people that have issues with them. I did not, and I don't know what the issues are that people have, so I don't know. My press works fine. I also bought my rivets from them. That way I knew they were going to fit the die that I got. No guesswork. I just ordered everything in the same size and it all fits together nicely. So I just put the post side on top. I don't think it matters. Put the cap on the back. And then just make sure you have that lined up in there properly so you don't squish your rivet. And then press down. And again, and I'm just putting the bottom cap in the, like, seats it in there, and then the top part just fits over it nicely. You get perfect rivets every time, and I don't have to use a hammer, which I found difficult when I first started doing rivets. Okay, so after the side panels, we're going to do the same thing pretty much to place the hardware on our handle connectors. So we have 4 handle connectors for the small bag. These are each 8 inches long. And you'll notice throughout the pattern, the measurements for the small bag are what is given on the graphics and in black, just in the regular instructions. And then I have in parentheses, medium measurements are purple and large measurements are pink. So I'm going to get these all lined up perfectly. Take my ruler and mark 2 inches down from the end so that I can fold these all to the back 1 inch. Okay. I'm always picky about liking my clips to be right way up. The white side, or the clear side on the back, is flat, so it lays nicer if that side's on the bottom. I think after this, I'm not sure what my next bag should be, but I'm thinking about maybe going back to some of my first patterns and kind of updating those with new videos, which I think I'm a little bit better at now. I struggled on the Consuela clutch. I struggled on that video, and I even dropped the camera, which is just my phone, but I dropped it, so that was bad. Somebody just commented on YouTube the other day that they were watching the videos and they were so helpful, and then I thought about how bad they were, so I may go back to those and edit or just do them over. Okay, so we have all 4 of our handle connectors. I'm going to take a main panel pattern piece, and to find the center, I am going to just fold it. You can use your pattern piece to mark. I'm not going to fold all the way, I'm just going to mark the top and bottom. And you'll need that later on when you sew the pattern. You'll need that when you sew the bottom in. So we want to measure for the small bag 2 inches from the center mark, and you want to make a line. I want to, let's see, since this is wax canvas, I'm just going to like kind of scratch it into the canvas. So I want my line to be 2 inches to the left of the center and to the right of the center. And I need my line to be 7 inches tall. So, let's see. All right, that worked out well. Center. And I just actually made that line 8 inches tall, so 7 inches. All right. It's a good thing that I have that blow dryer and I can get rid of the extra of the line. I'm just going to pin these in place. Right alongside that line. Oh, my pin just broke. I'm not struggling at all. Here, well, it's hard with this webbing being thick and these pins being not great. At least I can clip it at the bottom. Honestly, I think I'm going to skip pinning. Let's hope I don't regret this, guys. I'm not going to pin it. I'm just going to hold it down along that line. Okay. All right. Cross your fingers. Alright, now you want to back stitch across the top of the strap and then stitch across one more time. If you don't have rivets, you could also use Chicago screws, or you could sew a box with an X in it here for extra reinforcement. I don't think it's really that necessary since the whole entire strap is stitched down. So the small bag is like a smaller for a traveling bag, but would be great for toiletries or makeup or something. Or for a child, maybe. Or you could honestly probably make it into a handbag. Maybe if you used like nice leather straps. think these have a nice, I mean, they're a basic bag design, so you could add features to it. I may add embroidery on some. I'm trying to decide if I want to stitch up one more stitch or not. I want it to be even with the other side. I think I will put one more stitch in there and then stitch across. Okay, so pretty already. Let's do the other main panel. Same process, so I'm going to mark the centers at the top and bottom. All right, and then I'm going to mark 2 inches to each side of that center mark and draw a line, or in this case, scratch on a line with my pen. Okay, and then 2 inches to the right. All right. And now I'll do the same thing, and I'm just going to kind of hold the strap on. I'm going to hold the handle connector in place and not pin it. If you choose to, also on these heavier bags, or on the bigger bags, I'm sorry, even the small one, if you think you'll be carrying a lot of weight in there, you might want to put a piece of stabilizer right behind the back of the top of the strap, just so that way it has something else securing it from the back so that it doesn't rip the fabric. Alright, one more strap, handle connector. It's so hard for me when I make these videos to try to remember the actual names of all the pieces, to call everything the correct thing. So, handle connector number 4. And I forgot to prepare my zipper ahead of time. I don't remember what color I planned. I made sure I had enough zipper tape to do all 3 sizes without ordering more. And I did, but I don't remember which side, or if I planned black or gray for this bag. So I'll have to pause to figure that out in a minute. I'll do one more stitch. I just always kind of eyeball to make sure that I'm not stitching further up or down than I did on the other strap connector. So these snips are super nice. I really like them. Again, I got them at Havel Sewing, and they have other scissors and rotary cutters and everything there that are like their own brand. So I'm thinking about trying some of those out too, because these snips are super nice. And I have another pair of snips that I use for my embroidery machine that are amazing. So we have both of those exterior main panels are finished. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get the zipper pocket panel inside. So let me grab my lining. Here are my two interior zipper panels, lining zipper panels. I need to find the center. I wish I had my skinnier chalk pencil and I cannot find it for the life of me, but I need it right now. So if you haven't noticed yet, I'm obviously very unorganized, which is not helpful. I have no idea where it is. Okay. We'll just use this and try our best. So I need to make a line that is 1 inch down from the top and centered and 8 inches long. So it should stop 1 inch from the left side and 1 inch from the right side, because this panel is 10 inches long. Okay, and then I want to measure down 1/2 inch from that. And go ahead and draw another line. Again, you should still be centered, which will be 1 inch from each end. Okay. I wonder how I sharpen this. If it was sharper and I could get closer to the ruler, it would be nicer. All right. Although this is like a wax marking pencil, and it irons off, and it really does iron off, so that's kind of nice. Okay, so now we need our lining main panel, and it will be right sides up. And again, I'm going to mark the centers. So I'm just going to use a pen right now. So make sure I keep it in the seam allowances because I'm marking it on the right side. All right, and I want to keep this centered and 2 1/4 inches down. 2 1/4 inches down from the top and centered. All right. And this should also be centered over the rectangle that you cut in the fleece, which I can feel through here that it is. So then I'll just go ahead and pin that in place. Ow. Okay. And now, oh, and I also will put rivets using the same technique in those handles. So I need to make sure I don't forget that. So I'm going to switch to a shorter stitch length now. I set it to 3. And I'm just going to stitch around this rectangle. so now we are going to draw a line down the center of this rectangle. This is too thick, I think. Well, that works. You get the point. You don't really even have to draw the lines if you know where to cut. So let me grab a pair of scissors. Okay. Normally I would honestly just do this with a ruler and my rotary cutter, but for the sake of the video, I am just going to use scissors. So you just cut straight down the center of that line, stop about 1/2 of an inch from the end, and cut to the corner of the box, and make sure you do not snip through your stitching. So I'm just looking close at where my stitching is and clipping up as close as I can to the stitching lines without clipping through it. Okay. So now I'm going to go to my iron and I'm going to press this through the, I'm going to pull the whole pocket through this hole that I just cut, and I'm going to press it flat, wrong sides together. So I will do that and then be right back. Okay, I have my interior zipper pocket panel flipped through the hole so that it's now wrong sides together. So now we are on step number 5, and we want to place the short zipper. So this is the 8-inch zipper for the small bag. I don't actually have any 8-inch zippers, so I'm using a longer one, and I'll cut it down. The zipper's kind of catching, and it's literally the only gray zipper I have. That seems okay. All right. So I like to use a glue stick, which of course I should have found ahead of time. Okay. So I have 300 of these because my kids' school required them, and then after school ends and he brings home 90% of them, then I just take them all for my sewing room. So I'm just going to put a thin line of glue along the edge, each long edge, on the pocket side, not the front, or not the like exterior or lining main panel side. And now I'm going to place my zipper. Right now, if this is right side up, my zipper pull is at the right, with the zipper closed, and you want to just center it over that hole as best you can. I'll flip it over and make sure I have it actually centered. I prefer my zippers to close to the left, so I always do them that way. Okay, and now I'll just put this in place to get it lined up. Make sure it's nice and straight. And then I just press it down. And this isn't going to hold it long term or anything, but it will hold it long enough to get it sewn on. I always found it kind of difficult to pin zippers in place. So I should have changed my thread out. We are going to use black thread. Do I want to do that? All right. Hold on. We're going to switch this out to purple. Or I could use gray or white. I'm using purple on the exterior though, and I don't think that will look too bad here, so. And I already have a purple bobbin made up, so. Or at least half of one. I'm sure it will run out before I finish the bag. Pull my bobbin thread up. All right, I'm ready to go. So now let's try this again. I feel like if I ever, I'm kind of like, oh, should I change out my thread? And then I don't, then I regret it that I didn't. So just do it. All right, I changed this back to a longer stitch length. Again, always back stitch at the start and stop of your sewing lines. Always stop at the end with your needle in the down position to rotate. Why that looks bubbled up. I like to move my thread tails out of the way so I'm not sewing over them, just so it's easier to trim them off and they're not caught under the line of stitching, which probably is a waste of my time, but one of those weird things I Then you'll stitch right up to where you started and back stitch a few stitches. I sewed over my thread anyway, so okay. So now that I have that stitched in place, I will go ahead and trim the extra zipper from the back. I don't mind if it's caught in the seam allowance here at the edge of the pocket. And I always make sure that I have the metal stops out of the way so that I'm not sewing over those or cutting through them. Okay, and now we will place our other interior. This is step 6, so we have the other interior zipper pocket, which we are going to now place right sides together with the one that's attached to the bag. And I'm going to pin just those two zipper pocket panels together around the top and on both sides. And I'm leaving the bottom open. We will turn the finished bag through that opening, so do not sew the bottom closed. Okay, so now we want to, it's easier for me from this side, and I just flip it so the lining main panel is right side up, and then I fold the lining main panel out of the way. I want to switch back to a shorter stitch length. And make sure you back stitch really well here because you'll be turning the entire bag through that pocket when you're finished. So you don't want to rip your stitches out. And again, I like to trim all of my threads as I go. Okay, I do want to go ahead and trim the seam allowance around this pocket right now, which will just make it easier when you're finished sewing the bag and you close up the bottom of the lining pocket. It's easier if this is trimmed. I guess the top doesn't matter. I just trim it anyway. Alright, and now on the wrong side, I want to take my main panel, my pattern piece here. Yeah. First of all, I kind of ripped part of it, so I'm going to tape it. So I have my main panel pattern piece, and I am going to take my scissors and just cut along these dashed lines. This will mark the seam line, which is very, very helpful. If you don't, yeah, it's most important to get this upper portion of it. And you can use like an X-Acto knife or something to cut this, which would probably be easier. Okay. And now I'll be marking on the wrong side of my fabric, so I'm actually going to use a Sharpie, which won't seep through all of these layers of fleece and everything. So just line up the pattern piece with the back of, or with the wrong side of your lining main panel, and we're going to do this with both lining main panels and both exterior main panels. And then you just want to mark that seam line. And if you don't have to mark all the way to the end of it necessarily. It's just most important to have this top corner. And then flip your pattern piece over and repeat this process. Okay, and we'll do this on the other lining main panel. Oh, and at this point also, you will want to mark your centers if you haven't. So this one I marked it on the right side, like, yeah, I marked it on the right side. So I'm going to mark that on the wrong side as well. It's important when you get to the end to have all your centers marked. All right. All right, now the exterior panels. I'm not going to mark these with my Sharpie. I'm going to grab just my regular pen, which honestly is probably not going to write on this, but it can just scratch into the wax, and that's really all I need. Okay, and I already marked the centers on both of the exterior main panels. I wouldn't recommend skipping this step, because this makes sure that you have everything even when you sew the sides and the main panel together. It's very helpful to have this marked ahead of time. Okay. All right, and then I'm also going to, let's see, I'm also going to mark the centers of my lining side panels at this point in time. Okay, so everything is marked. Step number 7, here's where we will attach the zipper. So I want to go ahead and put my rivets into this, since I didn't do that before I go any further. I'm honestly just going to pause the video and do that quick, because I don't feel like I need to film all of that. All right, so I have all of my rivets added, and I actually was just thinking that this is probably a good place. We have the little things assembled, and then we'll do the main assembly in the next video. So we'll go ahead and start the next video, I think, with that top zipper. Really, the bag comes together pretty quick, I think, so yeah, I think we'll go ahead and do that. So we are on step 6, and we'll start the next video with step number 7.